Welcome to the Startup Grind.
I'll keep it short and sweet. As he said, there's a flyer on your chair. We are having our Bright Buffalo Niagara Entrepreneurial Expo on June 15th at the Hotel de Lafayette. It's going to be a great event. There's going to be 35 entrepreneurs that are going to get on stage to pitch live. That's followed by an entrepreneurial trade show and cocktail reception, and then we're going to have our celebrity speaker, Bill Rancic, coming in to do the keynote address. So registration is open until June 10th. If you visit brightbuffaloniagara.com, you can register for that, and hope you all will join us. Thanks.
Thank you. Startup Grind, May 31st, which is today. And actually, we're going to go back a slide. Nora. Oh, so we got a 60-second pitch. Come on up. The stage is yours. So I like to do this just so you, people starting business can get up and practice their elevator pitch, which is very important for startups. So here you go.
Good evening, everyone. This is actually the first time I'm holding mic in my life. So, forgive me if I get a little shivering while speaking to you guys. Okay. I hope. Let me start with my family before speaking to this about the idea. I have a 2-year-old kid, and I always thinking of giving a better life for him, like every father or every mother does, right? So I keep always talking to many of my friends and colleagues how they are doing to give a better life to their kids and all that. Mainly I have friends or colleagues whose kids are in elementary schools and preschools, right? During the off-school hours, when I meet those kids, they are not able to meet their right friends. When I say that, they make a lot of friends in the schools, and once they come home, they are not able to meet their friends. So they are getting a chance to meet the people of their friends, of their parents' friends, right? So I have seen this as a one gap where why can't my kid play or spend time with the friends he is making outside the school hours? Why should he meet people only based on my relationships or my friendships? Okay. Then I got an idea so that I can create or somebody else creates. It doesn't matter. I want a solution in the market where kids' parents can connect if the kids are already friends or they belong to the same institute. So once kids' parents are connected, they can do well in planning the life for their kids, like maybe planning play dates, or maybe knowing better about their kids' institutes, primarily schools. Like, how do I know if my kids' school is doing good or not?
You did a good job, man. Sorry about it. So, what is one thing that we can help you with for your business?
Hi. So I'm looking for a co-founder with a technical background, like mainly internet-based or app-based background, who can travel with me on this journey.
Awesome. How do we contact you?
Let me put my Gmail ID or phone number with you, so anyone can contact you if they want to contact you.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you. You did a good job. That's tough. You did a good job. Okay, Startup Grind, May 31st is today. So this will be my last Startup Grind, and I appreciate the team, everybody who has helped, and all of you. It's been an amazing grind. I've learned a lot. It's fun, but unfortunately I'm leaving Buffalo. Startup Grind is definitely going to continue, and I know it will get even better because of people like you in the community. So we're planning to take the summer off, but there will be an application on startupgrind.com. I'll put it on social media as well. If you are interested in applying for the director position, if you want my job, which is you don't get paid and you work but it's fun. It's fun. You learn a lot. So if you know anybody who'd be interested in being the director or joining the team, somebody who's interested in entrepreneurship and helping people, definitely I encourage them to apply. So now we're going to get started. Kayla and Christine founded Plum. They are a 43 North company from Canada, and it's something really interesting to me. HR, the future of work. How do you get the most out of your employee? Because your employees are your most valuable asset. So I'm going to hand over the mic to David, who will be conducting the conversation tonight. And let's put our hands together for Kayla and Christine.
Let's start off. Can you give us your elevator pitch for Plum?
Plum uses cutting-edge behavioral science to match job seekers with employers' unique needs for their role in company culture.
Would you like that?
We help job seekers with self-awareness. People, when they're looking for a job, don't necessarily know what they're looking for. They generally apply based on title, geography, amount of money that they make, but it's really the day-to-day that affects whether or not you're going to be successful in your job. It turns out that 89% of turnover is actually due to behavior failure, so that's what we're trying to fix with Plum.
How was the idea for Plum born, and how did you decide to go through with it?
So I built 2 businesses before Plum, and at the second business, it was an educational writing software company. And we went to make our first hire, and I was told that it was going to be a loss of $250,000 on the company if we screwed up that first hire. So not wanting to make a mistake, I had an executive coach that had kind of, as a side hobby, created a psychometric assessment. And for a lot of money and a lot of time, we were able to use it on 80 applicants that applied. And 2 candidates stood out for completely different reasons. And there's this guy, Joel, who was amazing on paper. He had a master's education, 5 years of relevant work experience, incredibly charismatic in the interview. He was the golden boy by every measure, but his test scores showed that he had mediocre work ethic. So he was hired anyway. And then the other candidate scored well above everybody else, ranking in the top 3% of the workforce for overall productivity. I was told she was 1 in 1,000. She clearly outperformed Joel, and I'd be a fool not to hire her. And so we ran an experiment and hired both. And Joel's fantasy football team was doing really well 3 months later, but he was only doing 10% of his work, so he was fired. And the other person, within 5 months, was running the entire operations of the company, and within a year and a half, she had tripled sales and took over as acting president while I went on maternity leave. And the punchline is she had a BA in fine arts, 7 years of waitressing, and didn't know how to use Microsoft Excel. So if we had relied on the traditional hiring process, we never would have found this diamond in the rough. And so after 2.5 years of hiring this way, we saw an opportunity to turn this into a software as a service business and allow psychometric testing that traditionally was only used at the end of the hiring process with, Fortune 500s, allowing this for everybody to use of all sizes at the beginning of the hiring process. And the punchline is that first hire is my co-founder, Christine.
All right. What have been your major challenges while trying to grow Plum, and how have you handled them?
Well, one of our major challenges
There's a one
is
outside. Is that?
Turning it off and on and see what happens. One of the major challenges that we always had was sales, right? So when you started your company, you think about the product, you focus on the product, you're like, this is your baby. And you end up kind of rolling along trying to get the product that you need to get out with forgetting about your customers and who's going to buy and what they're going to be interested in. So I think for quite a while we were tinkering around with our product and not necessarily working on the sales aspect, which is actually the most important aspect. We also had a lot of mentoring in the very beginning, and you kind of get a little bit of mentor whiplash when you're looking at building a product. So someone tells you to do one thing, someone else tells you to do completely the other. And I think for a while we went a little bit back and forth with our different mentors, but we finally got a groove on it about a year and a half, like really making the product smooth, really building out our sales. But one of the major challenges was getting the process smooth and figuring out the targeting markets that we should be going after.
It really comes down to sales. I don't think that any of us really understood the amount of time that has to go into getting the sales right, and how really you're not a business until you have repeatable sales. I mean, we had early customers that loved us, and we'd come out with a new version, and customers that love us, and we constantly heard the positive feedback, but we didn't hear, we didn't see how difficult it was to get, you know, the first 10 customers are the hardest, and then you're really proud when you get to the next 20, and then you're really proud when you get to the next 20, and then, you know, when 200 people have used you, you feel really great, but that's still not a business, you know, until you constantly are seeing month over month growth, and you can see within the next 12 months that you're gonna break even. Like, it really doesn't matter if you can't get that sales engine going. So, you know, we've been in business for just over 4 years, and we're just now getting sales to really, to be at a point where we can be really proud of what we're doing from our sales perspective, and it took us a long time to really understand that.
So that leads really well into, and with that, take the mic, can't hear you. Take the mic, you guys can hear me? So what would be the worst day that you've had while starting Plum, and what would be the best day?
I think we have the same worst day.
I talked about the worst day, like, you got to hear me say it like a week ago, so you get to tell this time.
I don't remember.
Okay,
Okay, so the worst day was, we basically thought we had to shut the company down. I don't remember exactly how you say it a lot better, I think, but I remember being in the back of a car panicking because that was it. Caitlin was like, we're selling our shares, we're all going to Thailand for a month, forget it, I don't want to do this anymore, and all of us kind of panicked a little bit. This was, about 2.5 years ago? You can say the why, but that was the outcome.
So we got into business with an academic when we first started. So my executive coach was a professor, and this was a side hobby, and he had 2 silent business partners, and we were going to go out and build a business to commercialize this product. And you know, we had a relationship for 4 years, so you know, there's lots of trust, and it was basically a handshake deal. And as we started getting grants and stuff, they kept insisting for paperwork, and he wouldn't let a lawyer do it. And so he wrote up the paperwork himself, and we were really naive in terms of the terms. And when we, you know, I got so many different pieces of advice, those early mentors, different legal advice, and nobody kind of said this is a really shitty deal. Like, really, nobody told us. So we went ahead and it was a letter of intent. So we knew we had to finalize it into a license agreement, and that was the agreement that would happen. And the closer we got to finally making it a license agreement, those 2 silent business partners weren't silent anymore. And a lot of the promises of things that they could deliver didn't happen, and a lot of the, you know, vision of what we all agreed to wasn't happening. And so basically we were advised to stop that relationship, but before we even got to a point where we were like, no, we're done, he literally was like, I'm out of here, mic drop, gone. Like, you can talk to my 2 business partners, I'm done, I quit, I'm out of here. It was his sabbatical or something, and so it was, you know, September, and we're in this business for almost 2 years at this point, and we're like, we have no idea if they're going to turn the part that we were licensing off. We had no idea, you know, if we would ever. We knew we couldn't raise money with this problem going on. We didn't know what it would take to restart. We ended up.
Customers too.
Huh?
Customers.
We had customers. We were terrified about what this would mean for our customers. We just, I mean, it was a huge problem, and our advisors kept saying, you know, you can get through this. You can, you know, you want to build something way better. You can build it better. This is your opportunity. And we called every single academic. We're based in Ontario, so we called every single university, and everyone's like, yeah, I can build what you're asking for. It'll take about 10 months. And we're like, shit, we don't have 10 months. And then we ended up being in contact with a professor at a Central Michigan University, and it couldn't be any more different than the first experience. An incredibly humble person, very affordable solution that could be done in a few months, and it would be exactly what we needed and always wanted. And we were able to completely redo our product, completely redo our intellectual property, own our intellectual property in-house now, and launch it and get all the new customers on it before anything was ever turned off. And so we survived it, and our lawyer, who's a lawyer for about 500 different startups, said, he's never come across a company that could have got through what we got through. And he invested in our company after this. But it was one of the most challenging things, and the advisors that saw us go through it went, wow, we don't know anybody that could have gone through that. And so right before kind of committing to getting through this, we had a moment of, well, if we stop now, we could probably get out of it and nobody would get hurt. Whereas if we keep going, we have no idea if we're going to fall flat on our face. And we made it through, and it's been the best thing we ever did because we were able to own our own IP after that, and we were able to fundraise, and when everything turned around, by the time we really controlled 100% of our product, it made a world of a difference, and not having to have a relationship with somebody that really wasn't in it. And now, the professor that we work with is the most amazing collaborator, and we own the IP and we pay him, so we're the ones in control of what needs to happen. But yeah, that was the worst. That was the worst. Yeah.
You said best day? I think there's a couple best days. For me, it was always the days that legitimized the fact that we were successful. So I remember the first day, and it's corny, right? But I remember the first day somebody paid us. It was $1,000. It was a recruiting agency, and I was super excited. I couldn't wait, and I remember looking at the check. So that was one. Getting into MetaBridge was the first time that we were accepted into an accelerator program, and we got to go and be a part of a group dynamic where someone was legitimizing us as a company. We got into Google Black Box. I remember thinking, like, crap, Google thinks we're really good. Like, that's got to be something. So, these kind of points, first office, that was also really cool. So anytime really that it was sort of the next step in the business where we could look back and say this was progress and we made progress, we've gone somewhere from where we were, to me was
I have to tell you that, we did have some customer testimonials that were videotaped in the early days, and it was basically the customers saying, they couldn't live without us, because that's one of the things you have to hear to make you feel like what you're doing matters. And so the customer testimonials for sure have been huge, and also the larger sales, where people are forking over a pretty good amount of money, that feels good, that they would, there's if they're paying you like $1,000 a month and they keep paying you, and like a year goes by and they keep paying you, it's like, wow, okay, that's pretty substantial. But honestly, some of the stuff that has made it easier, we have all made a lot of sacrifices, and the company took a lot longer to build than we expected. It's still taking a lot longer to build than we expected, and it was a lot harder than we expected, and took a lot more investment of our time, energy, and Christine can tell you how many times she has moved since we have started this company, and the amount of personal, putting yourself back, like in a back seat for the company. And in December, in my mind, things got a little easier. We closed $1.3 million Canadian, so that's like $1 million American investment. And we were approved for another almost $500,000 grant. And we had been, I'm talking 4 years, we had, 2 years of that we didn't get paid. 2 years after that we were making the lowest in our company. And in December we finally got to give ourselves raises.
When we started out, Caitlin had just had a baby, so she moved back home and was living with her mother and her husband and her baby. In order to offset the fact that we weren't paying each other, I was landscaping or picking up sticks for my landlord for an hourly wage. So things were really bad for like the first 6 months when you're trying to get started. So you like to think it's glamorous, and it's not, right? I was gardening.
But in December, in December we were able to give ourselves raises and make a normal, normal salary. And we had gone into a lot of personal debt with the promise that it would be paid back one day, and we got paid back. And it felt like you could breathe. Like it felt like, it's not the major financial returns that you hope to or anything like that, but it was like the first time in 4 years that you could breathe, that no matter what happened, we had learned a lot, and we still were it felt like the first time coming out for air and having your head above water, and it was a wonderful feeling. And then what happened is last week we just hired 5 people, and 4 of them just started. And so we're now 14 people, and in 2 weeks we'll be 13. And we were all going out for happy hour on Friday, and I took a big picture of our team, and one of our co-founder put our logo and so it's P for Plum, selfie, so Plum selfie, and a picture of all of us at the table together. And it was this feeling of like, we're a real company. Like, we have all these people that are depending on our success and our growth, and we've done something right to get here with all these people, and they're excited and they feel like they want to grow this and that they're part of this growth, and they're really like genuinely happy to come to work and be part of this and be part of the future. And it just kind of felt like we are really at this next stage of being a real company and having all the real pieces in place to get to the next level. And it was this kind of, it's this moment that I haven't quite experienced before, when it's like, yeah, this is like real.
The next piece on there, since what you ended with is that you joined 5 more people to your team, especially given the nature of Plum and having worked at a startup and founded a startup, what do you find to be the most important thing about creating a culture for people to join your startup?
Well, we do behavioral and team analyses, so we have a pretty good idea what we're looking for from a product perspective. But without plugging that, I think some of the major things when you're bringing on people for a culture is to make sure that you're looking at what their strengths are. Do their strengths actually align with what the goal of your company is? Are they going to fit in well? Are they going to be able to either follow the management style that you have, or are they going to be separate and kind of go rogue and not be a good fit for what you're able to offer? As the company grows, you're constantly changing your culture. I mean, culture, we have a lot of people that talk to us about it, being an HR startup, and it's kind of a nebulous word. Like, when you ask people what culture means, they're like, mission statement, like values, like, it kind of like goes into the ether, and you don't really know what exactly it is. It's hard to identify. But for us, at least in what we do, it's the characteristics of the people, the strength, what they want to do, the traits that they're going to promote when they come to work, and how well we can manage that as sort of our job and bringing them on also when we're cultivating them as they grow.
And then, of course, you've mentioned that you did Black Box in 43 North. Do you have any stories from 43 North that you'd like to share?
So, Christine mentioned that when we first started the business, I had my first kid, who's now 5, and then so while I'm interviewing for 43 North, it's like the final round of pitches, or this is like right when we've been shortlisted for the finals. I kind of slip in there because they're like, okay, so you're going to be in Buffalo for a week, and you're going to have this big pitch on stage, but like there's this week of beforehand of the Buffalo week before the competition, and I kind of slip in there of like, yeah, so Christine and I are really excited, to come to Buffalo for this week, and oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to have a 3-month-old with me, because I'm pregnant and I'm going to have a baby by that point. And they're like, yeah, I think you mentioned something about a doctor's appointment with one of your colleagues that you had to postpone a meeting. So I think for me it was the fact that, everywhere that we went that first week came a baby. And there was a big debate as to whether or not I was going to pitch wearing the baby, which really glad I didn't, because he got super cranky right before I went on stage, and that would not have done well. So I think for me it was just being shocked at how accommodating 43 North was. I mean, they have said from day one that they're all about diversity, but they really, really are all about diversity. They were just incredibly supportive, and I don't think I've met another organization that's just been as accommodating and supportive and encouraging. And Mayor Brown loves babies and took a wonderful picture. Just the whole community in general, it just felt very supportive. So that was kind of a unique experience.
My favorite thing about Buffalo / 43 North, so you asked me where I moved. I've lived in 17 different cities. I've moved 35 times. About half of those are probably for the company. So I go to all the different places that we have to go. And anyway, when I got to 43 North in Buffalo, people would ask, how do you like Buffalo? And they would talk to me about Buffalo, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I know, summers are great, all things are great. And I kind of got this impression that, they're just doing it because I'm part of 43 North and they want us to stay, and that's the whole point. And then I would go to the grocery store, and I would go to the bank, and I would go to different places, and everyone's like, Buffalo's so great. And really, there is a genuine belief that Buffalo is a fantastic place to be, and everyone believes it. Even if there's a little bit of insecurity of jumping from manufacturing to tech or whatever it might be, I've never lived anywhere or been anywhere, and I've lived in major cities, that people would rival for startup environments, right? So New York, San Francisco, a lot of places like that, and you never see the type of pride that you do in Buffalo. So to me, that's been the most amazing thing about 43 North in Buffalo is seeing how people are in the
To go back a bit, with the experiences you had with your silent partners, from what you learned, what would you recommend people to watch out for and to look for when looking for those partners and advisors?
I think, well, it kind of goes with anything, whether it's partners, advisors, co-founders, anything that you're doing, you are more than marrying these people, right? Like, they're tied to your money, they're tied to your job, they're tied to your location. One of the things that we were talking about, Caitlin and I have lived together 5 times now for the company, so, you know, we better get along well, we better like each other. So when it comes to partners, investors, you really want to pay attention to the relationships that you have and how well you think it's going to grow, because it really isn't any different you know, from an actual relationship. With investors too, one of the things that I think, well, Caitlin does all of our investment, but one of the things I noticed is that you really want to start looking for partners too that help you, that are going to help you grow strategically, not just someone who's going to give you money. So making sure that not only are you picking people who kind of equal your value, but also people that will help you moving forward and not just hand over money.
Yeah, it's a marriage. Literally for me, our other co-founder is my husband. And we work together beforehand. So, you know, the pressures financially of having all your eggs in one basket, spending all your time together, I recommend that, you know, it is great to go into business with your spouse because you're not, like, you're in it for, you know, commit to being whoever you're going into business with for at least 7, 8, 10 years. So if you're already making that commitment with your spouse, that's great. But test it out first, because once you're in, it's really hard to get out. So I'm really lucky that we had a chance to test it out on somebody else's dime first. And then, like, so that's, you know, it really is a long-term relationship. So you better, like, same thing with Christine, we were able to work together for 2.5 years before going into business together. And so I do recommend that if you have a business idea, probably going in and working together for the first time from scratch on your business, you're taking a massive risk. So try to de-risk it ahead of time before making that huge commitment. Just like, you know, you date before you get married. When you start to become co-founders, it's gunshot wedding, you're married. So do the dating first is kind of the point. And thankfully, you know, we had that opportunity in a previous company working together. What was the second question? I don't know what was the second question. I did too.
So actually, I wanted to follow up to make it a little more specific then, because you stressed the importance. But if you were choosing a co-founder, which a lot of people who are need to do, especially here in Buffalo with more ideas, which is more important? Is it more important that you really click with them than with the amount of time that you're spending, or that they're perfect for your product or what you're looking to do? What's going to be the biggest indicator of success?
Attitude, not skill. 89% of failed hires because of attitude, only 11% because of skill. I think it goes with being a co-founder, same thing. You're just going to spend so much time together. You've got to be able to get along. And so I do think it's the attitude fit. A lot of things can be hired for. A lot of things you can learn on the job. I mean, we've learned most of the things that we do now. We've learned through this position. So, you know, you can hire in almost everything. I mean, we're year 4, and we're now finally just getting a really strong lead developer. You know, we're a 3-person co-founding team of a tech company, and we didn't have any tech co-founders. You can survive. It's not the #1 recommended thing to do, but you know, you can survive.
I think you need to have full transparency too. So, like, part of with our test, we know each other's strengths and weaknesses. I mean, you find them out along the way, unfortunately. But I would say that's really important, and also to make sure that when you are looking for your skill set, like, one of the things that we see a lot of the times going through these different accelerators is, like, when you're trying to find a salesperson, you'll have 5 engineers who start at a company, and then they'll pick their worst engineer to be the salesperson, right? So you don't necessarily need 5 engineers to start a company, right? You need different skill sets, and so working together, like, when again, we worked together before we had our startup, but I knew that Caitlin was really good with strategy and vision, and I do a lot of the sales and business development. Like, we knew we were kind of on opposite ends of that spectrum, so you're not finding 5 people who are fighting for the same role. I think it's also a really important thing when you're looking for a co-founder.
You asked about angel, and you asked about investors, and that was the other part, is that, you know, I think there's a lot of ideas that you can just go out and raise $500,000 from a single source and, you know, go and talk to funds and go and talk to VCs. And at least in our community, you know, angel investors were kind of, oh, they take so much time, it's wrangling kittens, maybe, you know, just try to go to after the VCs. And our experience was, we raised $1 million from angels, and that's a crap load of $25,000 individual checks, and it took a long time, and it's a lot of work. But I can talk to, 80 angel investors and close 25 of them, whereas I can talk to 80 VCs or funds and not close any of them. So, there is something about, yes, it's nice to have strategic investors, but, out of the 25 that we raised from, maybe 3 of them provide that extra support, and that's great. The other ones were a check, and they get quarterly updates, and they send words of encouragement, and they're excited for our growth, and they're excited for what we're doing, but they also don't, VCs have a very specific mandate for a type of return that they need to get. The economics around it, what they need to see, are not aligned with your best interests. If there was an acquisition offer, you are in a position to accept it, whereas if it was a VC, if the economics don't give them a very specific type of return, you're blocked from making that happen, or this a very disgruntled relationship. So for me, angels are very, they're fantastic, and I think that they're not often given as much credit as they deserve, and they're incredibly important for the startup ecosystem. And a lot of those times you start with just building relationships. It's long before you're asking for the check. And so spending time, not just finding your co-founders, but spending time looking for the people that have influence, that know people, that have a Rolodex, that can vouch for you and introduce you to 3 more people that will also want to fund you, is something you need to start really early, and it's connections in the community, and it starts with angels. And yeah, if you get to VCs, great, but that's not where it starts. It always starts with angels.
Then moving into some questions for Female Founders Month. Do you think that being a woman has affected you at all during your growth of Plum, and if so, how?
I've been lucky. I haven't had any harassment. I was part of a CEO roundtable of females, and some of the stories were the classic stuff that you see in the newspapers. One was sexually harassed, and then that was a VC investor, and she had to get him kicked out of the next round where he wanted to participate in the next round, and it's very hard to stop somebody from participating in the next round, and she had to get everybody around to force this one party out, and it was just a horrible story, and it's unfortunate, but I haven't had anything bad like that happen. I've been very lucky. The worst I've had happen are, comments of that I was too aggressive. So, debating terms. We were debating on the number of board members. Should it be 5 or 4? It was a difference of a single number, and because I was standing my ground, I was too assertive. But it was the other investors in the room that jumped to my defense and said, if one of these other male CEOs in town would have said that, you never would have said they were too assertive. And she was no more assertive than they would have been. And so I had other people kind of jump to my defense. And I had another person say, it's time to, stop fundraising. It took a very long time to fundraise. And instead of saying, wow, it really sucks that you don't fit the pattern and that it's taking you longer because, investors don't see their younger selves in you, and you don't remind them of when they were, younger, and you don't walk around wearing a hoodie and in your early 20s, you just don't fit that pattern. And it's taking longer. They just said, maybe it's time to stop fundraising. And so that kind of sucked. And then I had, another comment of, you need to stop having kids, because I just had 2 kids under this. And I understand what they mean is stop having kids, stop fundraising, and get to running the business. And what they really meant to say is I can't wait to see you just being able to focus on the business and growth. And I kind of talked to them afterwards, and they're that's what I meant. And I'm yeah, but it kind of came out as stop having kids and stop fundraising and just do your business. So there's been little stuff, but for every time that we don't fit the pattern and there's some sort of pattern matching going on of, people look for what success looks like, and they want to take risks on things that are familiar to them. So the fact that we're not familiar is something that goes against us. But for every opportunity that happens, we get all these other opportunities to showcase, because we represent diversity, we represent a different view. And so there's a lot of speaking opportunities that we get, and there's a lot of if you're going to have 3 people go up and talk on stage, you can have 3 people that all look the same and sound the same, or you can have us as a team go up because we're going to represent a different view. And there is more and more encouragement for women founders, and there's not a lot to pull from. There's not a lot of people that you can say, look, this is an example of a female co-founder. So we get that opportunity, so it can be an advantage as well.
The strangest thing I saw is that because we don't fit into a pattern, I noticed that people will talk about us in certain typecasts. So, you know, Caitlin is like the tough one that gets things done, and, you know, like I've been the friendly one that people want to talk to, and which, I mean, you normally do that, but a lot of my founder friends, especially those that are male, you don't find there's sort of a follow-up. It's just, he's the founder of X company, not, oh, he's the this one or the that one. So I found, especially with the pattern matching, that people have kind of tried to put us in categories, which is sort of just more of an undercurrent that, you know, I noticed, but nothing that was really affected. I was affected with when they tell her that she's too aggressive and things like that. It's sort of a ridiculous thing to say, but again, that's why things are changing.
The name, please tell.
Oh yeah, so we always get confused for each other too. That's like the stupid thing, but legitimately, I did a talk here, whatever it was, like 2 weeks ago, and I got up and I'm like, I'm Christine Bird and my co-founder Caitlin, and da-da-da. And then another 43 North winner came up afterward and was like, Caitlin, the CEO of Plum, and I'm like, it's not me. So like, we always get confused for each other, and we're guessing it's because we're both females, but yeah, it was anecdotal.
With that, do you have any specific advice for women who would like to join or start a startup?
Pushing past the insecurity. So there's a lot of insecurity in females that I see on a regular. When I was up in Waterloo, as a sort of a side note, but I started a poker league for women when I first got there, because I was bored and I was like, I want to do something. So I wrote this email out and I said, who's interested in joining something? I want to do like a book club or a poker league. And I knew most of the like important people in town, and they all wrote back CCing me saying, yeah, you know, super excited, let's do poker, that sounds great. And then individually, one by one, these really powerful women said, oh yeah, no, I'm scared. Actually, just kidding, I don't know how to play poker, I don't really want to go, this meant something else. And so again, an undercurrent is this sort of push outward to say everything's fine, but inward there's a strong insecurity. And if you allow that insecurity to make your decisions, or if you hide your fear by saying it's practicality, you won't actually get anywhere. So one of the things, like, this has been the hardest thing like we've ever done, right? Having a startup, trying to push through all the different things, the ups and downs, you know, the having no money, the moving locations, the like all kinds of stuff that you end up going through. If you're not ready to push through it and you're gonna like bank on your insecurity, you're never gonna get through it. So the biggest thing for me is really like pay attention to what you're saying to yourself, pay attention to how you talk to yourself, men or women, right? But I just notice it a lot more with women. But make sure you're paying attention to the messages you give, because that's what's gonna happen to you when you go out into the workforce and out into starting your own company. Yeah. Build up your own confidence, because it's super important.
That was really good.
Scared to talk.
I think that, you know, I find, and this could be my own bias, but I find that women share a bit more transparent about what's going on and the hardships. And so, you know, so sometimes the men will, at least in our community, they'll play hockey together or they'll play poker. And so naturally the conversations of like, hey, I know somebody you should talk to, or like, I raised money from this person, you can go, I'll make an intro. And so there's a network effect of, you know, if you're in these boys clubs, you're meeting more of their connections. And so as a woman, if you're not in that poker league, or if you're not playing hockey, you're not necessarily getting those same stories, and you're not getting the same connections. So it's really important to kind of stretch and try to network as much as possible and create new networks and ask for help and ask for stories and advice from other people. Fundraising, you know, I felt like I was reinventing the wheel, and I had some really good advice that I stuck to the full way, and now every time a female comes to me and says, hey, I'm thinking of fundraising, I'm like, okay, here's everything that I learned over 18 months, take it so that hopefully you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and I try to share as much as possible so that they can. You know, we start having our first sales team, you know, I was talking to another female CEO, and they just paid a consultant like a crap load for $20,000 or $30,000 to help them set up their sales process. And in 2 seconds, she emailed over her templates, and we were able to repurpose them so that we're not reinventing the wheel. And so, you know, I think that you've got to reach out to find where the advice is of people that have already done it, so that you don't have to do quite as much from scratch. And you've got to fight to get that network, because it may not be as easily ingrained as it would be with some of the other people.
When you do that, I completely agree with Caitlin, but when you do that, do not be afraid that everyone you talk to, and you say, that drives me nuts. The thing that drives me the most nuts about startups is when you ask them how they're doing, everybody says, good, busy. Like, not everybody's good. Like, your shit's on fire, your product's burning, like, everything is falling apart. If you actually start building relationships, you know, I'm going to talk about networking and whatnot, but when you actually start building relationships, it's when you become more vulnerable, and you're not going to die, your company is not going to implode just because you ask somebody, hey, I'm having this huge problem, do you know anybody that can help me? It is very transparent in the startup community that everybody likes to cover everything under the rug. And they don't with their like actual friends and their family and things like that, but I guarantee you, having gone through X number of incubators now, that it's a very common thing for everyone to say, oh, it's fine, everything's fine, and it's not. And it doesn't get you anywhere not to share, so yeah, on Caitlin's point, if you have a couple people, especially those that you can trust, really make sure you are reaching out, because it's a lot of a shitstorm.
So I just have one last question before we'll move to the audience, and this is one I did steal from Evan because I loved it, is that if Buffalo is going to succeed, it needs more of blank.
I want the blue monk back.
That was bad.
I have an answer. You can talk about it because you live here. So I commute a few times a month. So every other week I'm commuting from Waterloo to Buffalo. It's only 2 hours and 15 minutes, like on the 2 hours and 6 minutes, depending on 6 minutes. 2 hours, 6 minutes on the dot every single time. Last spring I was fundraising in Toronto, and I would be in Toronto once or twice a week, and I'd have to always schedule 3.5 hours. And it's geographically much closer, but the traffic's crap. So to go from Waterloo to Buffalo is a much nicer commute. There's never traffic. It's so much better, and it is a perfect jumping off point for sales in the United States, which every Canadian company in Waterloo and Toronto is looking for. And so I think that part of the success is really creating strong relationships with Waterloo and Toronto and Buffalo. And people are doing it. It's happening. It's just happening quietly, and it's happening a little slowly. And so I think that there needs to be better collaboration between, there's some amazing incubators in Waterloo, where we're from, and Toronto and Buffalo, and they just need to spend a little bit more time, you know, sending people back and forth and sharing resources. We've got great tech talent out of Waterloo. You guys have fantastic connections to, you know, the like life science and different companies here. And so there is, you know, Buffalo with 43 North, or, you know, if there were 4 Canadian companies this year, but there's a lot of like, you have to just be here. And I think that there's a little bit more of, let's see this as a triangle, which is a larger geographic area, and together as a larger inclusive area, we can get more done. I think it's part of it, and we talk about Buffalo all the time to companies in Waterloo and Toronto and say how great it is, and we're trying to get as many people down here to take the tours and to meet the people and start networking, and they come back and they go, wow, I had no idea. So like, we're doing our part, we just need to be doing it a bit louder and a bit more.
Yeah, maybe a little more esoteric, but I think ownership of the confidence. So, like I said, I do find that everyone's really patriotic about Buffalo here, but you also hear kind of a little bit of on the back end of, but we're not quite sure if we're getting there. And there will be a tipping point of, you know, no, like you've owned it. You know, whatever's going to happen with the Renaissance, whatever's going to happen with the tech burst, and, you know, it's going to change into certain things. Part of it has to come from an internal ownership that the city is thriving the way that it is. So I hear it a lot, and, you know, when the government, like Mayor Brown, he speaks and things like that, and I don't hear it as much necessarily in the people, and I think there's just a little bit of a reticence when it's been a while since things picked up. We see the same thing in Kitchener-Waterloo. But yeah, the kind of, everyone is so for this town, and then just to know that and believe that it's going to succeed, because it will. Because it's been long enough, it's been, you know, it's going through a lot of major changes, and they're all really good from everything we see from 43 North and the different aspects. So just knowing that success is happening now and not just waiting for it to be around the corner.
All right. Questions from the audience? I'll look it up.
Thank you both, that was great. So this is the first time I haven't been asking questions. I got lots of questions, but I'll keep it one. So you mentioned that you just hired a lead developer now for 4 years. After 4 years, so how did you build out the main product? Was it outsourcing it? Was it contract? Was it you were writing personal checks to developers, because that's a big problem that I see in Buffalo with, I'm not technical, I can't find a technical co-founder there goes my startup. So, do you have any advice or how did you get it done?
Yeah, so the first year, we used Wufoo forms. I don't know if you're familiar with Wufoo, it's like a survey monkey. Anyway, we had a graphic designer on staff, that was our first employee. So he made us look really good, was able to do some front end stuff, and the back end was literally like Wufoo forms and Excel spreadsheets. The second year, we outsourced to a company overseas because they could do it for, I think it was like $15,000. They could build us everything that we needed to do from scratch within like a 6-month time period. And what happened is it was so buggy that so many bugs that we kept having to pay additional, and it took so much longer to build. So if you start adding additional months, you start adding additional bug repairs, that $15,000 now becomes something like $25,000 and $30,000. And then you're like, crap, I probably could have paid, a full-time developer for this price at this point. So, yeah, and then the notes, so they used a framework that was common, and we were told it was common, but it wasn't common for our area, and then the notes were in Ukrainian. So when we finally brought in a developer, they basically took 3 months trying to learn the framework, but couldn't, so they said, I just need to write it over. Like, I need to rewrite it. It'll be faster at this point if you just let me rewrite it. So she rewrote it, but it was a part-time student working, and splitting the time and attention didn't work. So then we brought in somebody that had been let go by BlackBerry, who was very entrepreneurial, and he said, no, this is all crap, I need to rewrite it. So, and then he hired a guy, he hired a guy, and that guy's like, okay, well, he says that we should write it in Python, let's write it in Python. And then the guy from BlackBerry, he was just transitioning to Toronto, so he left. So we have this one guy that's been hired by the guy that's just left. He built it in a language that this other guy said to do, and he takes over the code base and he goes, oh, this guy knew nothing about Python. He just thought it was a good idea, but this code's crap, so he had to rewrite it. But he stayed with us for 2.5 years, and 6 months later he brought in his buddy. So we really, the version of the software that we've been running was built by 2 guys that were full-time employees, and we were able to get them for $40,000 each, and able to get some grant money on top of it. So, that's not the going rate in Waterloo. Most people make 60 as a starting most of the time. So we got, recent grad, like they've been out of the workforce for a couple years, and they were full stack developers, and they built it. And I wish that we had done that from day one. I wish that we had hired 2 developers, because they can kind of keep each other in check, and they can help each other, and if you lose one, worst case scenario, the other one knows how it was done. And so, we really should have just done 2 full stack developers, and it would have cost the same amount of money than all these other investments. And those 2 developers, because there was just 2 of them and a graphic designer, didn't really need a lead. It's now that our team is like 5 in total for developers. You need a lead to kind of be planning out things better, and you need to be better at figuring out how to get it all done. So that's where the lead has to come in now, because there's a team to lead. But yeah, I don't recommend. The only time outsourcing that I've ever seen works is if you have a lead developer that knows how to manage an outsourced team and has a prior relationship of success with that team. We see that all the time. It's like, that's their team, and they were working with them at a previous company, and when they come over to your company, they continue that relationship. But unless you have a lead developer that really knows how to manage that foreign team, you are taking way too big of a risk. Yeah. So,
We had the same problem with sales and marketing as well, trying to outsource in the beginning. So all the things that she said, same thing for hiring.
Maybe you should use Plum to hire a developer. My question is about intellectual property and protection. If you had to leave a trail of breadcrumbs for the next person to follow, what would that trail be?
Yeah, so a lot of the intellectual property is baked into the platform, the technology platform, and so our developers have been really good at documenting their code base now, so that somebody else can come in and understand how it was built. So, if something tragic happened or they both left, somebody would be able to come and pick it up. So proper documentation around the platform. The other thing is that we had a lawyer do the proper paperwork. So we have, employment agreements with NDAs and non-competes and all those things that go into proper employment contracts, saying that they don't own any of the intellectual property. And if they were working on something prior, it's listed so that there's no debate as to what's theirs and what's ours. So proper employment agreements, and then proper, each early founder, whatever, signed over any intellectual property to the company. So just having a really good lawyer with those proper legal agreements, having a good lawyer is priceless. I mean, that first story of all those problems that we had, we survived because we had an amazing lawyer that got us through it. And we, were able to, in the end, sign a release so that the previous partner signed a release so that he can never come after us in the future. And yeah, we had to pay, money for him to go away forever, but we have the proper documentation. There are no skeletons. It's clear to any investor that looks over things. And so you protect your IP by having those agreements in place. It's if you're in software as a service, it's not about patents. It's not about preliminary patents. Those are a waste of money if you're in software. You do patents if you're in other types of businesses like hardware or nanotech or life sciences, and that's what makes sense. But for technology, it's really just the legal agreements and the software documentation.
Two questions, okay? The first question is, you talk about behavior failure. I'm kind of thinking the flip side of that coin is the culture of the company that you come from. So where's the behavior failure seems and feels like it's putting it on the individual, and I don't know, is that too much of an individual? Where's the company culture responsible?
So behavior failure comes from both sides. Yeah, that was only one question. Behavior failure, what we see is, so for example, Caitlin was talking about how I have an art degree. What I actually went for was paintings conservation. So I was repairing paintings in museums for my education. And everyone, I went into it thinking, this is a really great job. It sounds exciting. It's ivory tower. I get to work on Picasso's, and I did all those things, and it was great. But the day-to-day, I was writing reports. I was doing a whack load of research. Nobody was talking to me, and if anybody knows me, that's a terrible outcome. So I had all these things that were happening on the regular that weren't who I was. I needed to be involved with people. So that's how it happens on the job seeker side. On the company side, what we see is no matter what the role is that you're hiring for, so say you're hiring for a data entry clerk that works from home, the most important things for hiring for that position are generally going to be their work ethic, because you're going to have to not expect them to be babysat as they're working from home. Introversion isn't a bad thing, because then they are, they don't have someone to talk to on the regular, so that's an important aspect. Maybe it's detail orientation, maybe it's that they love routine. The employer doesn't always recognize that when they bring them in, and what they do is they expect the person to sit across from them to be confident, to be charismatic, and have a really good appearance. So we decide who we like within 90 seconds. It's unfortunate, but that's the kind of nature of the beast. I mean, you do it like you saw us, you make decisions. Everyone makes decisions about people all the time. This is what we do primarily. I was listening to a study the other day that said male white CEOs in America are 5 inches taller than the average white male in America, right? Why? Because the taller you are, the more likely you are to protect an environment, right? It's very, very primal the way we do things. So the behavior failure comes not only from the job seeker, but also the employer as well. So when we do the matching, we're making sure that we're matching both of those. For your culture question, the second thing is that right now what we're testing for is a mixture. We test for both. We ask questions based on the culture and the job position. You can do it that way, but we realize that people like to have it spread out so they can ask different questions at different times. So in our roadmap, the next 3 months, we're coming out with a culture survey as well as a job survey, as well as a talent analysis of what people actually will enjoy when they come to work.
This is a question. So I've done startups before. I did a startup in Nebraska. It was the first startup I did. That was a disaster. And it's a lot to do with culture. But now the people, I'm the founder of the company, so I'm bringing people on board, and I'm really trying to get them to understand what a startup is. And I work with a bunch of surgeons, so it's a new environment for them. So does your company, I feel if I send some of these guys to you, if I just tell them the culture's going to be like this is what a startup looks like and all that, I can only tell them so much. They have to talk to a third party, if you will. That's what I was kind of thinking for you guys. You could help me validate. When I say it's going to look like this one day, it's going to look like this, and it's going to fall apart, it's going to fall apart like that. Is that something that you guys can do then? Okay.
If you're asking if you can buy our service, then yes.
Okay, so my question is, when you were first starting your company, or even before you were starting your company, when it was just an idea, you were just brainstorming and forming and getting everything together, do you share your ideas and the details of your company with a whole bunch of people, just those close to you, or virtually just no one except the co-founders?
In my experience, transparency is going to get you the furthest. The more you talk about it, the more feedback you'll get. I mean, you're trying to build a business to solve a need. And so the more people you talk about it, you can find out, is that a need that you would fill for them? Or do they know somebody that you could be potentially filling that need for? You know, that their feedback helps you build your business. So nobody should build a business in a vacuum. So if you're only talking to your co-founders, you're not talking to the people that have the problem you're solving. So, you know, unless you're a third-time successful founder and you've got the top people in the world and you have tons of experience that you're trying to solve against, there's no reason to be stealth. You know, like the more people you talk to and you're open and transparent, but nobody is going to steal your idea. It takes so much more to build a company than that initial idea. So my belief is share, get feedback as much as possible.
NDAs don't really mean anything. Like, people will tell you that, but they're kind of garbage. Also, there's a book called How to Talk to People, I think is what it is. It's very short, but it's really good because it actually does get you out of the vacuum. I was talking to someone at some other event, and she came up and she asked me, like, what's my advice for how to help her build a product? And she was building something that was going to go into pet stores, or Walmart, or a sleep store, and she was like, well, it's this thing and it's like good with anything. I'm like, well, have you talked to any of your potential customers? And she said, no, and I don't know how to do that because I don't have a product. Well, then you go to these stores, right? Go to the pet store, you know, surround yourself in an area where it's just selling a product similar to yours and say, can I ask you 5 seconds? I'll give you a $5 Starbucks gift card. You know, can I just ask you a few questions about would you use this product? You know, talk to the store owner. But I mean, go out there and talk to people. Like, you can't, like, that's the biggest thing, and I said that earlier, but the biggest thing is you build your own product and believe like it's holier than thou because you built it and it's gotta be perfect and people want it. Not always, right? So sometimes it's something very different about your product that people are actually buying, and it is critical information to know what that actually is.
All right, one last question.
Hi. So sometimes organizations or leadership in the organization think the culture is one thing, but the people below them actually think of it differently. So how does your product handle that, where the folks you're talking to describe it as one thing, you're trying to help them hire for that, but in reality it's something really different?
So, a couple things. An anecdotal story is that we were working with a very large job board, who shall remain nameless, but working with them for an 8-month pilot. And when we went in, they said, we know our culture. Our culture is everyone's super nice, and we're all super friendly, and we all love each other. But they were dropping off like flies, right? And we're like, okay, well, it's got to be something. Maybe it's the pay, maybe who knows. So we went in and we screened their entire team. And we found out that they were all really jerks. Like, everyone had no empathy. Everyone was like pushy, guarded, skeptical, like you name it. Bottom of the empathy barrel, they were all there. So they were saying to people, come on in, it'll be great, you know, we'll love you and hug you, and then like murdering them when they turned around. So, you know, one thing that we can do is showcase to people that there's a discrepancy between what they're saying and what they're doing, and then like through team analyses and internal benchmarks, kind of get them rated to a certain level. Another example, we surveyed 500 salespeople on it doesn't matter what company, but we did a survey on the entire team, and they knew, they were like, no, we know the thing that we're looking for is detail orientation, and so they said, it's gonna be the top, we know it's the top. And we actually found out that their top performers had almost no detail orientation, and the bottom performers did. So sometimes it's just even one piece to the culture that's awry, and you don't really know what it is. The whole reason we built that product to be able to go in, though, is to put data and metrics behind it and not make guesswork. Because if you do ask the employer, they're gonna kind of make it up. No one's gonna be like, my culture is crap. Like, nobody really wants to say that, right? So kind of being able to put some science behind what's going on in your culture and identify where the gaps are and how you can fit in is sort of what we do, and then it's kind of on the employer to really make the changes.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you, everyone.